Yep, go for it.
Okay. So again, I'm Lindsay, and I'm an estate horticulturist in Connecticut. And today I planted dahlias and pinned roses and clematis.
I'm Caleb Melchior. I'm a landscape designer with Peon Smith, and today I drew a wall. Brie?
I am Brie Arthur, and I am a green industry communicator. And last night I stayed up until 4 and worked on PowerPoint. And then I slept for a few hours, and I got to play in the garden as a reward. And I will be back on the computer until probably 4 again on PowerPoint.
Well, we appreciate you spending that valuable time and sharing it with us.
It's my pleasure to not be on PowerPoint and to be on Blab tonight.
Well, maybe to get started, Brie, you can tell us kind of your background, your journey to becoming a garden communicator, and then maybe you can finish by explaining what a garden communicator is.
Okay, so my degree is in landscape design from Purdue, and I originally went into estate gardening, much like you, Lindsay, and that was actually what brought me to North Carolina from the Midwest. And I realized while I was at an estate garden that I loved producing plants. And so for the majority of my career, actually 14 years, I was a full-time plant propagator with perennials and then trees and shrubs, which are really kind of my main interest in the spectrum of production. And 2 years ago, I had an opportunity to venture into the odd world that is communicating the value of gardening and horticulture in general. And I joined a PBS show called Growing a Greener World. And we film here from my home garden at different segments featuring predominantly my design strategy of foodscaping. And I also write, and now I speak around the country at different green industry events, giving advice on marketing and plant selections. And really just, I feel like my real job is to be the Energizer Bunny cheerleader of horticulture. And it's a passion, and it's a wonderful opportunity. And I would have never gone into communications had opportunities not kind of unfolded in front of me. But there's a real need for it in our industry in particular. We're a little behind in other industries in how we get our message out. And so it's a real privilege for me to be able to be a part of coming up with new strategies to, embrace the millennial market and then frankly, the real new generation of kids that are in elementary school right now. So, and I am the National Director of Region 4 for GWA, which is the community of garden communicators. And so it's not just writing, it's also speaking and doing, video sessions and anything that really involves getting the horticultural message out to the public and even into the industry. So garden communicating is a really broad field, just like every other facet of horticulture is very broad. And there's a lot of opportunities here that and this is Shasta. There's a lot of opportunities that young people could really take advantage of, especially people that, oh dear, Shasta, you have to move. Young people that are, even more keen on technology and really understanding the new ways of communicating, because that changes all the time. So.
So do you want to talk more about what you're doing with younger people?
Well, sure. I have a couple different initiatives that I work on with different corporate support. And one of the big ones that I'm really excited about is through a nonprofit called Sustainable Heroes. And it was actually founded by Ahmed Hassan, who was the originator of the HGTV show Yard Crashers. And it started as basically school crashing. The community would drum up some funds and there would be, some general fundraising. And then this group of horticulture experts come in and kind of crash the school for a weekend and build this garden. And that's really evolved for me in that building the garden isn't the challenging part. It's the follow-up. It's keeping the garden going. And, a lot of times these are schools that the teachers are excited about it, but they don't really know how to grow plants they certainly don't know how to grow efficiently. And that's a really critical thing when you don't have endless amounts of time to manage a space, is that you know when to get the seed sown and when to remove the plants, and, you know, to keep things cycling. And so for me, I go in quarterly now, and I'm able to, you know, really have a long standing relationship with students and encourage them to take this on as a hobby, not just at school, but at home and in community settings.
Okay, so you're kind of coaching those schools in a way?
Yeah, coaching, consulting. When I go to the school, I will actually spend 2 days where I go and teach every single class that's in the school. We'll spend 45 minutes each class in the garden so that the kids get some really meaningful hands-on time. And, you know, it's something that makes their week really unique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you work with the teachers on curriculum or?
I do, like vaguely. And there's actually really wonderful curriculum that already exists that's testable. Thanks to the Berkeley School, really that has all been taken care of. And the programs are wonderful. You know, it's really critical, particularly in public schools, that if you start a garden program, that you have either a STEM or a STEAM lab, so that you're really attaching science, technology, you know, arithmetic, English, everything is being included, so that there's value not just in that you're getting food from it, but that you're actually having applied information from other, you know, different aspects of school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that kind of ties in maybe to your passion for foodscaping. Do you want to talk more about that?
Well, yes. You know, I've been foodscaping for 10 years. So when I bought my first house, it's funny how it came up, because I've always been a big fan of Rosalind Creasy from California, and she's really the lady that ushered in edible landscaping. And I remember reading her books and feeling really desperate because I didn't really have money to go to Home Depot and buy lumber to build a raised bed. And I was under the impression that that was just how you did it. When you lived in the suburbs, you made a box. And it was really a relieving experience to plant my first vegetables in my foundation landscape and really start to consider the power that that really affords us. And when you think about the amount of space that's devoted to suburban landscaping, and how even if we were just using the open mulch space to grow some seasonal vegetables, if every neighborhood was doing it, our commercial agriculture model would change in a drastic way and be far more sustainable. We would lessen the food miles crisis by hyper-localizing food, and I think really empower people to take some responsibility for their health and wellness through their consumption. And it's my dream that someday the landscape industry is going to be associated for something that's truly practical to our everyday. You know, I've always felt sort of a disadvantage in that what we represent, though it's extremely valuable, is only available to people with a fairly large disposable income. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I'm really hoping that as millennials become more economically empowered, and they do start to populate the suburban area, because studies are showing that the millennials don't want to live in the urban setting forever. They actually do want a little space, and maybe they do want to get married one day and have a family and you know, have a little place that's their own. And I feel very hopeful that when that era comes about, their needs are going to be very different from what we've seen thus far, with the baby boomers being our main dynamic and who we're serving in the landscape industry. You know, just from an aesthetics point of view, I don't think that people my age and younger take the aesthetic from the golf course. You know, I'm not motivated by big sprawling lawns and clipped hedges, unless it's at a palace in Europe, and then it's something else, you know.
An impressive scale.
It's different when it's in a tract subdivision, you know, and the landscapes don't look good, and they are being professionally managed, but for what reason? You know, and I also feel very strongly about the importance of our public space being managed organically. I think that we have done too much harm to the environment and to ourselves with chemistries that we don't fully understand. And I don't think we need to wait 20 years to discover that eating glyphosate on everything we consume isn't a good idea. I think intuitively we know that some of these chemistries are potentially dangerous, and I would like to see the landscape industry have a serious change in how they approach the management of land in general. We all know in horticulture, if you build healthy soil, you don't have to rely on fungicides, and ultimately you'll lessen your problem insects. And, you know, I think that there is just so much that we can learn from food systems, and when they're applied in public spaces, not only is it growing something that's useful, but it's creating a safer environment for everyone.
So something that you're talking a lot about is horticulture as kind of an industry that requires a lot of skill and a lot of craft and a lot of knowledge. And so how have you gone about really communicating that value and communicating that knowledge to your audiences?
Well, I don't know that I'm doing the best job of that. I mean, I think that every day I discover new opportunities and then things that I would like to see shift in this industry. And one of the things that really troubles me is how many capable, well-educated, skilled horticulturalists are out there that aren't really being able to find a job that's utilizing them to their fullest potential. And I think that's because we've had a relatively low standard for what we produce. Our services, particularly from a landscape side, are not what they could be. And I think there's so much potential for young people to really embrace these new movements, you know, particularly with ecology as a main driving point, so that there are better opportunities for well-trained professionals to actually grow plants in a healthy, well-adjusted environment. You know, I see too many people that are barely getting paid, you know, a living wage in this business. And that's very troubling, because we all have the potential to make this world a much better place in this industry, more so than many others. And that is not reflected in our general pay scale. I'd like to encourage young people to not lose faith. And I, for the last 2 years, have just become a gig kind of person. I'm an independent contractor. It was an enormous leap of faith. And I've had a lot of moments where I've questioned what I'm doing. But I know that as I move forward, and as particularly the foodscaping movement becomes more and more recognized, and I get calls from random landscapers from across the country that are interested in looking at this, that the dynamics are starting to change, and that in that there will be new opportunities for well-educated foremen and actual gardeners on staffs of landscape management.
Mm-hmm. And you've experimented a lot with different media. Like, you've used photography and Instagram as a way of communicating the projects you're working on. You've used video in different ways. Do you want to talk a little about how you've
I'm sorry. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe I
Hi, Ted. Hi, Ted.
Ted's so cute. Well, so yeah, I mean, I think that it's, in this day and age, you know, figuring out how to communicate is first and foremost visual. And we're really lucky in that we're an extremely visual industry. I mean, everything we do ultimately is to make something look prettier. And that makes it so that everybody in horticulture should be on Instagram. I'm kind of amazed that gardening isn't even more represented on that forum. Obviously, I think it's, you know, certainly generational who's using Instagram and the capacity that they're using it, but it's an extremely powerful tool. Video, to me, video is the way of the future. I am in the midst of writing a book. And video is a lot easier in that you can convey a point in a smaller amount of time and really get people to maybe be motivated for that minute and a half that you've captured their attention. I see that that is certainly the way of the future, that we will be capturing new audiences. And I think Blab's a great example of how you can do a session like this live from a garden, and you don't have to have an in-garden tour to have the experience. And at the end of the day, we're all looking for an experience that was exceptional, something that made our day unique and worthwhile. And we have this great advantage in horticulture that when you're not working in it, people really do appreciate what we create. And so, frankly, visual media is something that everybody in this industry should have already embraced. If they are hesitating for any reason, I'm not really sure what their plan of action is for the future.
Lindsay, I've kind of diverted from the direction you were taking. Do you want to like corral us back towards experience and opportunities or something like that?
Well, I guess, it's all kind of tied in. I guess you kind of just touched on it, Brie, but do you want to talk more about how you create your personal brand, or and how you use visual media to do that?
It's kind of, I would say, a blind approach in the sense that it's not necessarily well thought out, but at the same time, it's very genuine. Like what you see on Facebook and Instagram from me is basically a live snapshot of something that I'm seeing. It's not contrived. And I think for me, that's been a very successful measure, like a way for people to feel not alienated. I follow some bloggers and everything is so planned and none of it feels real or inspired, I guess. And I don't want that to ever be my brand. Frankly, I don't think that I'm coordinated enough to be that way. And I think that's okay to accept what you're capable of doing and embrace, the charm that you possess. And, I'm really thrilled that people enjoy seeing swallowtail butterflies from my backyard, because I certainly enjoy taking those pictures. It's probably the highlight of my morning, when I'm out there stalking a butterfly. I think with personal branding, depending on what you're trying to achieve, you may or may not be able to be as on the fly. I've had a difficult time figuring out what it is that I'm selling, trying to monetize what it is that I do, because I'm really kind of a philosopher in a way. I'm speaking around the country on a design strategy that hasn't fully been embraced. I'm always hoping that my next email is going to come from a developer that wants to look at trying to do a whole neighborhood as a foodscape. And it's certainly happening in other countries. And I'm hopeful that it is going to happen here. America is it's a big, slow moving machine. And we tend to be a bit more reactionary instead of looking into the future and seeing where we could improve. We tend to make some decisions in this country, I think, with hindsight, which isn't always the right approach. But I do feel confident that this philosophy has grounds and is attracting people that, at least at this stage, have a care about where their food is coming from and how it's managed. But in the last 2 years, figuring out how to monetize this message has been very challenging. And I think that, again, accept it for what it is. And if you're living in this way where you have a bunch of different jobs, I have a very diverse income that I, get little bits of money from now instead of one solid paycheck. But ultimately, it all adds into being a fairly profitable full-time salary, with the satisfaction that I at least know I'm trying my very best to make a meaningful change, so to speak, for this industry so that we're more relevant in 10 years than we are right now. And I think everybody possesses that opportunity within themselves, but it takes some courage and maybe some desperation to break out and do it. But That's okay. You can just look at that instead of as a challenge, but as an opportunity to expand, the people that you touch.
Hmm. One of the other things that you've been really good about doing is building like a regional and national network of collaborators that it seems have given, you've had the opportunity to do some really interesting projects like what you did at the art museum and some of the other installations. Do you want to talk about the opportunities you've gotten from those relationships?
Networking is probably the most important thing that you can do for your career. I was really fortunate. When I was in my early 20s, I was the propagator at Plant Delights, and my boss, Tony Avent, really, invested in me. And I cannot thank him enough for having sent me to meetings and allowed me to become a member of Perennial Plant Association and International Plant Propagators Society. And from going to those meetings and interacting with other professionals and learning, you've learned so much from what other people have to share. It's really been for me 15 years of finding soulmates all around the world in this industry and figuring out how we can help each other to institute something positive for our businesses and for our industry. I think that I like collaboration. I feel overwhelmed when I'm strapped with making all the decisions for myself, and I think I gravitate towards that. And being self-employed, that's probably the hardest part of it. I much prefer to be working collectively with a group for a greater goal. And sometimes it's hard to be your own cheerleader. And so I'm really fortunate that, like with the crew at Growing a Greener World, like Joe Lample, he's an amazing mentor and friend and encouraging spirit, and, has opened up a whole new world through PBS that I would have never been able to access. And I met him very specifically through GWA, which is another wonderful organization that if you have any interest in writing, even if you write a catalog for a nursery or, are an extension agent and reach out to master gardeners, GWA has so much to offer everyone in this industry. It's not just for people that are penning books. My network, I would give garden writers and IPPS like the top shelf for all the people that I know and really rely on. And, I feel like they're my professional family, and they keep opening doors for me as I do for them. And it's a really important thing that we all look to each other for inspiration and ways to move forward in this business, because we are only hitting the tip of the iceberg with what we could be doing for not just the American society, but the global society through the use of plants in the landscapes that surround every person.
For sure.
So I have a thing here on how to attract more people. And I was in a conference call this morning, an hour-and-a-half conference call, planning a session at Cultivate, which everybody come to Cultivate, support the industry, tell your bosses they need to send you to Cultivate, because it's an important time for all the people that are in horticulture to come together and have the opportunity to network and see each other in person for a couple of days and share each other's energy. So much gets accomplished at these meetings. But a big part of our discussion was really kind of figuring out, how do we get more people to embrace gardening? And I say to the industry, my first suggestion is that we stop lying. Let's stop lying that planting things in the garden won't require any effort. And let's stop lying about the sizes of plants. Let's just take that off of our labels, because we're being very untruthful. And let's start embracing the fact that gardening is a hobby that requires attention and time and devotion, just like any other hobby. And it's a real opportunity for us to, not just have customers at the beginning of spring, but have people that come in every couple of weeks and buy plants because they're addicted, because they don't see it as something that's a no maintenance I shouldn't have to do anything to have a beautiful landscape. I don't quite understand why we ever went that direction, but it seems very contrived, like maybe a marketing person from a different industry decided to take it that route. Because we all know when you grow plants, the moment the work starts is when you have first installed a landscape, and it never ends. And it's okay. That's actually a real positive. It's such a wonderful opportunity to enjoy being out in your garden and making your space, you know, unique and personable, and making you feel like you have a sense of place through the plants that surround you. I would like to see our industry in general give better, more realistic ideas. Like, you don't suddenly decide I'm going to do a triathlon and think that it's not going to take any effort. You know, gardening is the same way. And I think that we should really celebrate the physicality, particularly when we're marketing to younger people, because we all want to stay in shape, but I don't want to go to a gym and look at myself get uglier by the minute. You know, I can garden and at least I don't see what I look like. And I know at the end of the day, I'm tired because I did something and I have that instant gratification. And I think that moving forward, particularly with attracting, you know, people that are in their 20s that, you know, are devoting $30 a week to, you know, some kind of, whether it's a gym or it's a cycling center or, you know, some sort of community activity, gardening offers a lot of the same opportunities, and we aren't fully taking advantage of that. So I'm working on a celebrate the workout program that I hope to launch through garden centers that would kind of double duty. It would help maintain the grounds of garden centers and also create a sense of community for the people that went there every week and, you know, got to work out and sweat a little bit. So it's an opportunity for people that live in apartments to be able to get their hands dirty.
When I worked with Pearl Fryer, he always called it yard aerobics. And he said, why would you pay for a gym when you can come to my yard and do my yard aerobics and make my place look beautiful? Like, come here, it's free, and you'll get the same workout. Have you heard of weed dating? It's like a take on speed dating, but
I love that.
So if you're trying to get young people involved, maybe that's the way to go.
You know, I think that is a really neat opportunity. I don't do weed dating, but I have my neighborhood children that do all of my weeding. So in a way, it's preparing them for weed dating in the future. They're going to be really good at it. You know, as I look around my neighborhood, I live in a neighborhood that's almost 25 years old. And it's, you know, a development that was made of starter homes that are, you know, reasonably priced so that young people can afford to live here. And we each have between a half an acre and an acre of land. And you know, we're at over 60% of our consumption is coming from this, you know, small suburban plot. And I sometimes daydream about harnessing the power of everybody's lot just with the elementary school kids from my neighborhood.
So, Brie, I wanted to ask you, this year your theme seems to be grains, right? So,
well, yes.
So how did you choose that, and do you change year by year? So how did that get started?
Okay, well, I actually got started on grains last year, and it quickly became a complete obsession of mine. And it was because of Rosalind Creasy. I was describing this section in my garden that I had originally planted with ornamental grasses. And we've had two very wet seasons, wet years here in North Carolina. And all of my ornamental grasses died. Actually, I have a very high water table. And I was, you know, saying how I like the movement that grasses provide, but that I'm, you know, really devoted to growing food. And she said, well, grow wheat. That's an ornamental grass in and of itself. And then you get something from it. And I grew a modern variety last year of 850 square feet. And it was beautiful and it was great. And, you know, the modern varieties boast all the advantages, but it's also been bred to be mechanized harvests, so it was very difficult to thresh the seed out. And then it's, you know, it's also a complex a hybrid of a wheat that has 42 chromosomes. And I have friends that have gluten intolerances, and I really saw this as an opportunity to this year dive into ancient varieties that, for one thing, I can hand thresh the old-fashioned way, but also only have 12 chromosomes and are proven to be much more easily digested in general, even by people with celiacs. So right now I have 12 different varieties growing in the landscape. I have 2 photo shoots this week, and then the process of harvesting by hand will become underway just as we get into like the 100-degree temperature time. and you know, I realized last year that my 850 square feet gave me 25 pounds of ground flour. And that's a lot, right? And think about if everybody in my neighborhood had 850 square feet, we could provide at least a quarter of the flour for the year that our local bakery would need. And it's only coming from 2 miles away. And it's, you know, not really requiring a tremendous amount of petroleum. Obviously, it's all grown organically. And I also do sorghum so that we can press the canes and create a 0-kilometer sugar source. And this year, I'm really diving into rice, thanks to Cody Taylor, who's part of the Emergent group. He got up with the USDA and shipped down 22 varieties of Highland rice. And those are actually, I planted several trays today in the landscape as clumps, just to see exactly how much rice I can grow in an ornamental fashion, but, you know, to see how far does it get us. I have gotten rice into about 50 commercial landscapes in North Carolina. That's been by far the most popular of the edibles when I consult with landscapers about a foodscape in, say, a doctor's office or in a commercial parking lot or a neighborhood entry. You know, there's certainly a tidy factor that's first and foremost. And so tomatoes aren't necessarily the best candidate for those kinds of sites. But rice is really proving to be the grain that's, I think, having the biggest impact. And I'm really excited to think that someday maybe the Carolina landscape will be reminiscent of what made the Carolinas kind of independently wealthy from the time of the colonial ages. I think we could just all go to Monticello and see what Thomas Jefferson was doing and then reapply it to our modern day life. And we would all probably be happier and healthier. And frankly, our world would be more beautiful and more sustainable.
Caleb, did you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm probably looking weird. I'm helping a couple of people get their first Blab login sorted out.
Okay.
So I've been flicking back and forth.
Yeah, we can see the screen color change.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine.
I've been flicking a lot.
Well, I'm glad that people are joining in, and everybody feel free to ask questions. You know, that's what we're here for, is to have a conversation. So, let's see. Brie, we had a whole bunch of things we wanted to touch on, and now of course I'm forgetting.
Yeah, we did. Okay, I have it in front of me. Let's see. So we did want to talk about kind of billing and structuring the economics behind a gig mindset when you're drawing income from a lot of different places. And I don't know that I'm really the best at this. I think that, frankly, we all have so much to learn from Leslie. I'm like a big fangirl of Leslie. Sometimes I wish I could just give her all my stuff and then she could work out the details.
Yeah.
And I could just flit around and do what I do. But I do think that one of the big advantages of being a part of Garden Writers is having access to an attorney. And anytime you come in contact with a contract, have an attorney look at it, because you can really accidentally, by not really reading all the fine print and frankly not understanding the language in which the contract is written, put yourself in some major disadvantages. I've done it to myself several times, so this is certainly speaking from bad experiences. When you have a good contract and you have it looked at by an attorney, then that's something that you can replicate with every person that you then are going to be billing with. And at the very least, it makes you look more professional from the very beginning. So you're never having to go back and forth and justify why you're charging what you're charging. It's very important, I have found, as a woman in an industry that is predominantly male oriented, that you aren't taken seriously. And I'm a very enthusiastic person. I get very excited, and it shows. I don't hide it. And having a good contract so that there are no opportunities for you to get screwed in the long run is probably the thing that I have learned the most. I keep my contracts relatively simple, but everyone that I draw a paycheck from has a contract with me, so that I know that I'm protected if things don't go right, that, you know, there's some sort of minimum payment so that my time wasn't wasted. This is definitely talking from years of experience, because I have not always operated this way, but I'm really pleased to be in this place now. And I do find that my interaction with professionals from the beginning is more sincere and, frankly, more functional. You know, we both know that we're not there to waste each other's time, and you feel like you're working for something that you have set the economic value of. And that's important. I think that women in particular, but people in general in this industry, have a difficult time assessing the value of what we represent. And I've learned a lot from my peers and garden writers about how to, you know, approach your value and know that you are worth an extra couple of $100, because the product and service that you provide is valuable. And so I think, you know, it does take time to build the confidence to do that. But when you have a good, solid contract, people will take you more seriously from the very beginning. And that sets the pace for everything else.
I think that ties into what you said about networking earlier. Is when you have a network, you can talk to other people and find out their experiences, and also gain that confidence from them. You know, they will support you when you, you know, are wondering if you should have a contract or not, or how much you should charge or not. And Emergent for me has been so great, because, you know, I can post a question and say, like, you know, I don't know, asking questions about pay and things like that, and people will respond.
Well, that was the goal when Emergent came to fruition back in 2012. You know, I always laugh because, you know, I had like a really high fever. I had the flu that week. So I happened to be home a lot. You know, I was home from work, and there had just been an article in Organic Gardening about young horticulturists. And I saw that button, create a group, and Emergent just came out of like a feverish need to consolidate communications. And the core group that we started it with, you know, who are still actively engaged, that was our goal, you know, to make it so that we all had a forum that didn't require membership costs and didn't require going to a national symposium and spending several $1,000s and taking time off work, that was on our terms, that, you know, could enable us to have a better grasp on who else is out there that's like us. And I'm just so pleased that Emergent keeps chugging along, and that every day there's new requests to join, and that the conversations are lively. Thanks to you, Caleb and Lindsay. You both always pose such interesting questions. And, you know, it's just a refreshing part of the day to know that this exists now. And I hope it will always exist, because I think that anytime you're young in an industry, you need as much support as you can get.
Yeah, I have to acknowledge Josh, who just joined us, because he got me. So I'd never heard of him.
Yay! Hi, Josh.
And he said that I needed to join, so I did. And yeah, it's been absolutely wonderful for the past 4 years. There you go. Let's see. So somebody had a question that maybe should we address that later, Caleb? Or we've only got 20 minutes left in this hour, so.
Yeah, Renee had a question about what some of the new themes that you're going to be addressing
with your
are,
Foodscaping,
with Foodscape.
Okay, so, well, I recently, actually at a garden writers meeting, got introduced to some people that are now growing their own fibers to make their own fabrics. And oh wow, are the wheels ever spinning? Because I do live in cotton country. So I think that cotton is going to be something that I try to actually weave in to this summer's landscape. Now, I don't actually have any idea what to do with cotton. Once you have it, I don't weave. I'm not particularly qualified at sewing, but I'm just fascinated with the idea that you could create any amount of material from a suburban landscape. So, of course, flax for linen is something that I've been stocking seeds. Being a collector as I am, I'm not satisfied with just getting one variety. I have to get like 20 varieties and make it a big experiment. And I kind of regret that decision with the grains because aesthetically, it's not as nice when you have a whole bunch of different varieties that all perform differently. And particularly in the ancient grains, they've all lodged. We've been very wet. We've had very hard rains, and they are all flat to the ground. I honestly am very nervous about this magazine photo shoot that's coming up to feature wheat. But I think hydroponics, aquaponics, aeroponics are really my main focus right now, and we keep expanding those systems because I think when we're talking about people that live in urban settings and even the baby boomers that are starting to downsize and moving into condos, these water-based systems that are kind of untraditional or alternative growing systems are absolutely the way of the future. They are so easy. Your yields are so high. You feel like a rock star every time you look at it because they grow inches every day. And I think that people deserve to feel that empowerment that something like a well-functioning hydroponic system provides. And so I'm going to keep diving into soil-less systems. And, of course, that was driven because of my major root knot nematode issue here. My property, my neighborhood was a tobacco field. And the nematodes are just out for vengeance. So growing solanaceous crops and frankly, even growing cucurbits in the ground has become an impossibility for me. So that's where the grains are filling my ground and those other plants are filling my water systems.
We actually started growing a few things, not in the ground, like radishes and carrots, because up in the Northeast, we have a problem with voles. And the chipmunks and voles were wiping out any of our root crops. So we're experimenting with them in containers or plugs, really, where the radish grows on top of the soil. And it's worked out really well. So, it's kind of fun to experiment with those things. And, I would encourage anybody to do that. It's especially radish seeds. You're not going to lose much. But any of these kind of things, seeds are so inexpensive that you could just have fun with them.
Well, I completely agree. I mean, you don't generally jump into the passion of landscaping, with expensive conifers. That's usually where you end. Like you evolve into being a dwarf conifer collector. You start with seed because it's 99-cent investment, and it's kind of instant gratification. And one of the things I tell the landscapers in particular, and part of foodscaping really is embracing the ornamental palette, because that's where your biodiversity is represented. Food crops tend to be kind of monocultures. You grow winter crops, you're pretty much only growing brassicas or in the summer, you're predominantly growing solanaceous crops. But I tell these landscapers, don't get too ambitious. You're new to this. Use the 8 inches of the edge of the bed. And if you just edge the beds with different food crops, like garlic is a great edger. Peanuts are a wonderful edging plant. You can end up growing a lot of food at a very low cost, and you're not creating any space that isn't already in existence. And you're reducing your need to, spray Roundup on the edge because you have plants covering it.
Definitely.
Caleb, did you have a question for her, or?
No, I'm thinking about how to formulate it. Okay. Part of the thing that you've been talking about, and something that's really evident in your work and the way you talk, is that, I don't know, it's really easy for us in the horticulture industry to kind of become Eeyores, where we're all like really serious and always bemoaning, things should be this way, especially when we get into like sustainability. And you've been able through your work, especially with how you're working with kids and some of the public gardens that you're doing, you're really good at communicating wonder and like the excitement and like joy of even just like trying these little projects. So, I mean, that's partly your personality, that you're awesome and full of enthusiasm. But what are some of your suggestions for how we can kind of balance out that wonder and that magic of things growing with the practicalities of, okay, this is a school garden and they're going to have an hour to tend it a week?
Well, I appreciate that compliment. It takes some effort to not be an Eeyore, particularly in an industry where you're surrounded by them. That is, I guess, I'll give some insight. I had a life-changing experience close to 6 years ago on the solstice of 2010, when my house was catastrophically flooded and I lost everything I owned. And for 2 years, I fought this horrible battle between a builder and an insurance company and a mortgage company. And from that experience, I decided that there was never, ever going to be another day in my life that was wasted to futile aggravation, feeling anger over something that you don't have a lot of control over. And I would hope that it wouldn't take a catastrophic event to influence other people to approach their day-to-day in a very positive light, being mindful that we all have so much to be grateful for, to just be breathing air every day. And, I think when you start to look at things from a bigger perspective and you just tell yourself there's in every moment something to be grateful for, it makes it easier to seem perpetually optimistic because you are. I was optimistic prior to the flood, but I'm not as dreamy as I was. That was a big reality check for me as to what does it really take to live a life in this day and age, in this society, with, economics as our main driving point for why we wake up in the morning. And you have to be creative and you do have to stay motivated in order to do 50 different things in a day to make what you do make sense. Mm-hmm. But I am just, eternally grateful for the perspective that I gained from that experience. And, from all of the challenges and opportunities that horticulture has presented to me since I started working full time in 2002. When we were doing our dry run and you were talking about your new, recently graduated student, I thought to myself, that was me. That was me in 2002. I was that annoying person who thought that I could do anything. And frankly, I had the energy of probably 15 22-year-olds. So I did do circles around a lot of the people that I worked with. but I think that we can all appreciate that youthful vigor and take advantage of it. I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job of harnessing my 9 and 6-year-old neighbor's energy so that I don't have to run back and forth, with the wheelbarrow loads of biomass. And, I sometimes think that the biggest challenges that we face in this industry come from middle management. And it's that group of people that are settled in a job and they aren't inspired. They aren't economically empowered because they don't tend to be the business owner. And they thumb everybody down. And I see this today to the landscape companies that I consult with. I almost always find the biggest road bumps come from the middle management. And so I think for anybody that's in a position that's like that, I think it's important to be mindful of the impact that you have in creating a positive or negative environment for everyone else around you. And unfortunately, that does tend to be a systemic problem in businesses, and it comes from the top down. And so it's hard when you're the lowest on the totem pole to stay motivated, when you're not really making enough to be able to live from just one job, and the people that you work with are very negative and they aren't going anywhere with it. And so to the people that have the drive to do more, have faith that opportunities are going to arise some point in your career, and you'll be able to look back and see how those steps have all led to something greater. Probably my best advice.
Yeah, I guess kind of related to that. I remember when I worked for Pearl Fryer, that was right when the movie about Facebook had come out. And he loved it because he talked about risk. And he said, life is about risks and life is about choices. And, if you're not willing to take risks, you don't go anywhere. You're just going to stay the same. So we only have a few minutes left. Do you want to talk about risk, or is there something, I don't know, that you want to share? It seems like right now you're doing so much in terms of, you're just taking chances and trying new things.
I have devoted the last 2 years to probably not saying no enough, but to looking at everything that comes up and trying to figure out a way that I can make it work with the talents that I possess, and hope to gain more talents from the experience. And, at the end of the day, this sounds lame, but I just want the world to be a slightly better place because of the effort that I put forth. And, I think that's a pretty humble goal that we probably all share. And we should say it out loud more often, because there's nothing but goodness going to come when you have positive intentions. And so I feel like sometimes, I've overextended myself and I'm staying up until 4 o'clock in the morning and, have kind of created this somewhat dysfunctional homework environment where I do miss the schedule that I used to have with my full-time job. I feel like I've grown so much in the last 2 years that my perspective is really valuable now for a lot of different people in a lot of different facets of horticulture, and frankly, even beyond. I give a lot of talks now to, different medical groups and retirement communities, and, where people just want to feel good, and plants give that to us, and we don't necessarily market and advertise that as their biggest bonus, but really to me that's what plants are all about. It brings this commonality of joy in general to everyone, unless it's corn that's been sprayed with glyphosate, and then that doesn't bring me joy at all. It brings me anger, and I want to focus that anger into something more functional, and empower the landscape industry to take down Monsanto. But I do think that risk is a really, it's an important element in your life. And you'll know when the right time to take risks is, and it may not be that right out of college you should be so bold as to think that you're going to rule the world. Maybe you need a few years of experience to, understand how to work well in groups and get along with people and be the inspiration that makes the people that you work with laugh sometimes when they're there. I've often been called the jokester at work, even though I don't think I'm that funny. I'm animated. And I'm glad I can bring a smile to people's faces and lighten the load sometimes.
We had a question from Renee about what advice do you have for someone who's just graduated and is basically just starting out? I don't know if you have a 1 or 2 minute thing that you'd like to say about that.
Hi, Renee. I'm so proud of you. Congratulations. Take every day as it comes and enjoy every minute that you can. I know you're in Texas and it's hot. And I remember having some existential moments when it was really, really hot and I was probably really dehydrated. But, make the most of every moment that you have. Never deny yourself the pleasure of a trade show. And I would say get on joining some professional associations and, hopefully you have an employer that sees professional membership as an employment advantage or as an employment benefit, so that you don't have to devote the income to that. But the earlier you start creating your network and finding friends across this world, the better you will be, the better perspective you'll have, and frankly, the better of an employee you'll be. The skills you offer will be much, much more advanced.
Well, is there anything you'd like to plug, Brie? It sounds like you're working on a book. You've got some other projects going.
Well,
where do you want people to follow you? What?
Well, I was saying,
what can we all do for you?
Next week is Millersville. So, stay tuned to updates from the Native Plants in the Landscape Conference. It's a wonderful conference that Angela Treadwell Palmer and Wendy Brister put on. And lots of fun Emergent members are going to be speaking there, including myself. I'm actually doing a Bloody Mary demonstration. Imagine that. Nice. And Jared Barnes will be there. Claudia West and Thomas Rainier, Patrick Kalina. It's a wonderful crowd of people that are gathering to give some very, I think, insightful ways to move forward in this industry. And then cultivate, I can encourage everyone to, first of all, join American Hort and then get your butt to cultivate, because it's a really important event that it's the one thing in this country where all of the horticulture people gather, and you have nothing to lose by going there, and only a wonderful experience to gain and a whole new realm of people to encounter. So you can, follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm Brie the Plant Lady. I have a not so active website called Brie Grows, because sitting on a computer is the thing I like least. And catch me on Emergent, and feel free to get in touch anytime you have a question or want to collaborate on something.
Well, great. Thank you so much for your time, Lindsay. Is there anything else you want to throw in?
Well, I guess maybe the thing is just that we're planning on doing these conversations every other Tuesday at 8 o'clock on Eastern Standard Time, or 7 o'clock Central. So we don't have somebody scheduled right now for June 21st, but we have other people in the works coming up. So let us know if there's anybody in particular you want us to talk to. Maybe, either somebody that's about our age, our generation, or maybe one of our mentors that some of the older folks on Emergent that are there to help us and guide us. So yeah, we want to make this a regular thing. So
Denise, you're too funny.
So yeah, hopefully this will become a regular thing, and we hope that you will join us again or invite other people to join.
All right, and I'll have this up on YouTube tomorrow, actually, this time, and make it public. So
cool.
Well, thank you all so much for putting this together. And I hope we can take this on the road to Cultivate and maybe do a blab session from there. And I know we have it scheduled at the Southeast Green Conference the last week of August in Athens, Georgia. So they're very excited about us blabbing. So we have some great people to look forward to hearing from there. Dr. Richard Olson, Dr. Michael Durr, Dr. Alan Armitage have all agreed to be blab guests. So
that's really exciting.
Very exciting. All right. Well, cheers, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Have a good